All right, let's talk about the most complex communication network on the planet, the one that's buzzing around inside your head right now. We're going to follow a single thought on its incredible journey as it zips through the brain, transforming from an electrical spark into a chemical whisper.
So, how does it actually work? How does the decision to move your hand or a sudden memory of a song actually travel from one part of your brain to another? Well, it's a journey that happens at mind-bending speed and with absolutely microscopic precision.
And the hero of this whole story is this little guy, the neuron. For a long time, scientists actually debated whether the brain was one big continuous network or made of individual cells. Well, we now know it's made of trillions of these tiny, independent processing units. It's got these branches, the dendrites, that are kind of like its ears, always listening for signals. Then the cell body processes it all, and if it decides to shout, it sends its own signal out along that long cable, the axon.
Okay, so once a neuron decides it's time to fire, how does it actually send that message all the way down its axon? This is where things get, well, electric. And we're not talking about a gentle hum here. This is a sudden, powerful, all-in burst of energy.
This spark is called the action potential. And the most important thing to remember about it is the all or nothing rule. A neuron doesn't send a kinda loud or kinda quiet signal. It either fires with its full consistent strength or it doesn't fire at all. It's just like a light switch. It is either on or it is off. There is no dimmer. So what's actually happening when that switch flips? Well, it's this incredibly fast, beautifully choreographed four-step dance. It all starts with the rising phase. That's the on switch. Then it actually overshoots, getting super positively charged for a split second. Then, just as fast, it resets in the falling phase and even dips a little too low in the undershoot before it comes back to rest, ready to go all over again. Now, our brains need to be fast, incredibly fast. If that signal had to creep along the entire length of every single axon, we'd be, well, really slow. So nature came up with this brilliant hack, myelination. It's this fatty sheath that acts like the rubber insulation on a wire, but with a twist. The signal doesn't just flow smoothly, it actually jumps from one gap in the myelin to the next, like it's playing hopscotch.
And if you want to see just how much of a difference this makes, well, just look at this chart. It's wild. A myelinated axon can blast a signal along at up to 120 meters per second. That is over 260 miles per hour. Now compare that to an unmyelinated axon, which is just crawling along at about 2 meters per second. That incredible speed boost is what allows for everything from our quick reflexes to complex thought itself.
So, our super-fast electrical spark has raced to the end of the axon. But now it hits a wall. A cliff, actually, because it turns out neurons don't physically touch each other. There's a gap, and to get across that gap, our signal has to undergo a radical transformation.
Right? What now? The electrical signal can't just zap across empty space. This is the critical moment of translation. This is where the brain has to switch languages, from the language of electricity to the language of chemistry.
This gap is called the synapse. And don't let its microscopic size fool you. What happens in this space is one of the most important processes in the entire nervous system. This is the handover point, where the sending neuron passes its message to the receiving neuron using specialized chemical messengers.
Okay, let's zoom in on how this handover works. First, the action potential arrives at the tip. This arrival acts like a doorbell, causing these special calcium channels to swing open. A flood of calcium rushes in, and that is the key. It signals these little bubbles packed with chemicals, called vesicles, to move to the edge and dump their contents right into the synapse. It's a truly remarkable piece of biological machinery.
And just like that, our message isn't electrical anymore. It's chemical. And these chemicals, they are the words, the vocabulary of the brain. But, for any language to work, you don't just need a speaker. You need a listener who actually understands what's being said. So let's meet some of the brain's most important chemical words. You've got glutamate, which is basically the brain's main go signal. It's the gas pedal. Then there's GABA, which is the complete opposite. It's the main stop signal, the brakes. Then you have these other guys, the modulators, like serotonin and dopamine. They're not just simple on-off signals. They're more like the volume knobs and dimmer switches that fine-tune everything from our mood to our motivation. And these modulators are going to be super important to remember when we start exploring how consciousness itself can be altered. So how does the receiving neuron actually hear these chemical words? It uses a beautifully simple idea, a lock and a key.
Every neurotransmitter, the key, is shaped to fit perfectly into a specific receptor, the lock, that's sitting on the surface of the next neuron.
But it gets even cooler, because there are different kinds of locks. You've got ionotropic receptors, which are direct and fast. The key goes in and boom, a channel opens right away. Simple. But then you have metabotropic receptors. These are indirect, they're slower, and they're way more complex. When the key fits, they kick off a whole chain reaction inside the cell that can lead to all sorts of profound changes. This is how a single chemical message can have wildly different effects.
So let's just recap. We've followed a signal from an electrical spark to a chemical message, and we've seen how it's received. This entire system, from that all-or-nothing spark to the lock and key receptors, this is it. This is the fundamental code for pretty much all brain activity.
And it really is a precise ballet. An electrical pulse triggers a perfectly timed chemical release, which is then interpreted by specific receptors that tell the next neuron to either excite, inhibit, or just modulate its activity. And the wildest part? Trillions of these events are happening every single second to create the reality you're experiencing right now.
And this brings us to our final, and maybe most crucial question. If this whole system is the brain's native language, what happens when some external substance comes along that can also speak that language? What happens when you start rewriting the code? Because understanding this, well, this is the foundation for understanding how psychoactive compounds can so profoundly alter our very perception of the world.